there's a lot of pain going on in this world, and pain's always going on, but right now we especially feel it with our family of devotees in the Ukraine. And we want to welcome Niranjana Swami, who's always been very close to Kaustubha and myself. I've always loved him. And yesterday I was mentioning, Maharaj, that not only are you a beautiful sage, and you don't profess yourself to be this famous kirtan, but you're actually so wonderful at leading kirtans that I used to play a cassette of you over and over till that cassette was no more. That was such ever play a cassette so much like it's just over, that cassette's over. That's how. So welcome to the show, Niranjana Swami. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Raghunath. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your kind introduction, although I'm not really worthy of it.
Actually, we could go on much more, but it's a fact that Niranjana Swami is like just a person for 35 years. Raghunath and I have known is just very deep speaker on Bhagavatam, right? Like that's really my earliest memories of you is just speaking on Bhagavatam with such depth of realization, but a person of tremendous integrity. And Maharaj serves as the GBC, the governing body commissioner. It means basically he's for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He's the representative, responsible for Ukraine, as well as for Russia and other places as well, I believe. But particularly, there's a large devotee community in Ukraine that Maharaj is responsible and in touch with right now. He's really, currently his days are from early in the morning to late at night, just on the phone and through communications with the devotees and trying to help them and care for them in any way they can. Later on in the show today, we're going to give you information about how you can help those devotees if you like. But Maharaj, I was wondering if maybe you could just, for a lot of our listeners, they're unaware of the history of how Bhakti was introduced and then grew. I don't think we have to get into all of it right now, but how it was, behind the Iron Curtain in the days of the Soviet Union, that people like yourself were actually kind of sneaking in and kind of cultivating, a community of Bhakti, and then how that grew to the point where now it's like there's perhaps the largest temple in Europe is in Ukraine, and there's thousands and thousands of devotees. There's festivals there. Maybe you could just describe it. We could start with how you first started going there.
Well, to do justice, I should at least begin by saying that the seed of Bhakti was planted by Srila Prabhupada in 1971, when he went there for a few days to meet the professor in Moscow. And from that one meeting with the professor in Moscow, he met two young boys. And from meeting with those two young boys who came to his hotel room, he planted the seed. Yeah. And when I showed up, it was quite a few years later, and I was riding simply on the crest of the wave that Srila Prabhupada already pushed forward by his initial visit to the Soviet Union in 1971. I started visiting and other devotees were also involved, but they were all acting underground, right. As you can well imagine, during the Soviet Union. I started visiting at the end of the 1980s. It was sort of like the period of Glasnost, Perestroika, when things were starting to loosen up a little bit, but I was visiting as a tourist in tour groups. And it was arranged for me to enter to the Soviet Union with a tour group, when everyone knew at the time that you were on a tour group with a tour guide who was a KGB agent. It was well known. They were all agents. And they were watching us closely and making sure that we were cooperative. And there's a little story I can tell at one point, but I don't know how much detail you want. But that's when
everyone loves a good KGB spy story.
Everyone loves. I've been waiting for a KGB story all morning.
Well, the KGB story came a little bit later. But the first story is when I first arrived there. As I was instructed to enter the Soviet Union as a tourist. So I had my camera around my neck, and my hair was grown out, and I had my neck beads were removed, and I didn't bring any. I was in Western clothes, and I was part of a group that were coming from the United States, and we had direct flight. It was Pan Am from New York to Moscow, and there were about 25 of us in the tour. So all of us had to get to know each other well, because we were going to be together for the next, I guess it was 10 days, that tour. And I had to break away from the tours, and I had to give a sufficient or adequate reason where I was, where I was going. And usually I would break away in the evenings. When everyone was coming back to the hotel, I would go out at night, and I would do a program and meet with contacts previously that were made, and do a program in the middle of the night and give a class to devotees. But to make my first contact, it was a very interesting story. It's a good story. I'll tell it.
Okay. Right now, you're like the James Bond of the Hare Krishna movement.
Well, what happened is that I was told, see, I went with another person who sponsored my trip. Because they were very expensive to go to the Soviet Union at that time. They cost thousands of dollars, and this person had a particular interest to go there and to meet devotees. And he was a businessman, and he said, I invited him to go himself. He said, no, I wouldn't go without you. So he sponsored my trip. So we were told that, any conversations that were done always had to be spoken in codes in the hotel, and we could talk more freely outside the hotel. Because we understood that all the rooms were bugged.
Wow.
Wow.
So
codes, bugs. I love this already. Did you have a disguise? Did you have like a fake mustache?
No. My hair was just grown out, and I had no neck beads.
Monocle.
Western clothes. But I was told that when I arrived, in order to meet the devotees for the first time, I had to leave the hotel upon arrival, which was in the middle of the night. And our tour group, we had a tour guide who would come with us from America, who was sort of like the liaison between us and the Russian tour guide. And he was an American. And so I had to leave in the middle of the night when everyone went to sleep. I went out and I looked for a payphone to contact the contacts of the information I was given. So I walked some distance away from the hotel, and I came to the payphone, and then I realized I didn't have any kopecks in my pocket, which was the small coin that you needed to make the phone call. And I just didn't know what to do. I didn't speak any Russian at the time. So I tapped on the shoulder of the person who was in the next phone booth to ask him if he could give me a coin. So when I tapped on the shoulder of the person next to me, he turned around and looked at me, and he was the tour guide.
Oh.
And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I was thinking, I haven't been in the Soviet Union more than a few hours, and already I'm caught. And I didn't know what to do, because
he's going to say, who are you calling?
I had an agenda. Who am I calling?
Right.
I'm supposed to be a tourist. I don't know anybody there.
Right.
So the tour guide looked at me, and I was going to ask him for a kopek, but then he just looked at me and said, "What are you doing here?" And I just didn't know what to say.
You tell us you didn't kill him.
So I just looked at him straight in the eyes, and I said, "What are you doing here?"
Flipped it on him.
Flip it.
I don't know.
Maharaj.
Somehow Krishna in my heart just dictated, because it went back and forth like that for a few times. He said, "I asked you first." And
he really said, "I asked you first?"
Yes. Yeah, he really said it. Exact words. He said, "I asked you first." I said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And it went back and forth. And it turns out that he broke down first.
Like
What he told
like he
me
thought
is
you were the
that
KGB?
he didn't know. He didn't know.
Wow.
Yeah,
He didn't know, and I didn't know. But he broke down first and said, well, I'm a Jew, and I come as a tour guide from America to meet Jews who are persecuted in the Soviet Union.
Oh my God.
Now that was
And
untrue.
he kind of broke open his identity to me, and I don't know why. But
was
that's
it
what he
true?
told me.
Was it true? He could have been a KGB guy saying that.
He seemed pretty straightforward. He
Okay.
seemed pretty straightforward. So when he broke open like that, then he said, okay, now I'll ask you, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm a Hare Krishna, and I'm here for the first time, and I'm coming to meet Hare Krishnas who are also persecuted. And
Wow.
he said to me, all right, I won't say anything about you. You don't say anything about me. Now, why did you tap on my shoulder? I said, do you have a, I said, I need a coin. I need a coin to make the phone call. He gave me the coin, and I made the phone call, and I went back to the hotel room, and that was it. You know, we didn't say anything to each other for the rest of the tour.
I mean, it's all. When I hear these stories, it sounds like a movie. It sounds like adventurous. It disguises
scary.
secrets. It's actually very scary. The KGB, they're incredibly serious. There was labor camps and prisons and torture, and the fact that you did this thing. I mean, I can't even understand you, truthfully, Maharaj. You put your life on the line like every moment.
So I'll be honest, Raghu. I'll be honest. I never felt that way. I felt like the people who were putting their lives on the line, the people who lived there, not me. They were putting their lives on the line. I felt like I was, you know, what are they going to do to me? Maybe they would do something. At most, I just assumed that I would become persona non grata and I wouldn't get another visa to the Soviet Union, and they'd ask me to leave. The people who are really putting their lives on the line, the people there, they're the ones who are really putting, and I could tell so many stories, but this is not the time to tell them. I know you have other things you want to talk to me about.
Okay.
But I never felt, I mean, I was caught. I was caught once, and I was coming back to the hotel late at night because you had to leave the keys to the hotel in the lobby. You weren't allowed to take them with you. They gave you the keys on a very big stick so that you wouldn't put it in your pocket. And you had to leave your passports in the hotel if you were to go out. So I came back one night from a program, and I was going to get my key to my room, and Anatoly, who was the tour guide for that one, he was a really big guy. He caught me at the desk, and he came up to me, then he grabbed me by the scarf, and he started tightening the scarf around my neck, and he said to me, looking in the eyes, he said, "What are you, an anarchist?" So I told him, I do tend to be a little independent at times. Why do you ask?
Touche.
So, and then he started tightening the scarf around my neck.
My goodness.
And I said, "Oh my God, you know this was the last night of the second tour."
Wow.
And I thought, you know, what is he going to do to me? So he just said something very foolish. He said, "Don't you know that people who wear purple and black scarves in the Soviet Union are anarchists?" Which is irrelevant. It doesn't exist. He was just making it up.
Okay.
But he was trying to get a message across to me that, and then as he tightened the scarf, he threw it in my face and said, "We're watching you."
Wow.
And that was it. That's the last night I saw of him, because it was the last night, and I was on my next flight out that very night out of Leningrad.
Wow.
But and I thought for sure I wouldn't get back in again, but I did. I got back in again. So I was there in 1991. I was there when Yeltsin was on the tanks in front of the Parliament building in Moscow, and I was saw all the tanks coming in. I've been through a lot there.
Oh, wow.
So that's
Well-
my history. That's how I first started visiting the Soviet Union.
Okay, thank you. And you know, there is a whole long history of the, you know, fascinating history of how Bhakti spread, you know, behind the Iron Curtain, and then ultimately the curtain fell down, and at that point, Bhakti and the Hare Krishna movement really exploded, you know, in the former Soviet Union, and maybe we can fast forward to today. And you can give us an idea of what we say the yatra, but like what the Bhakti community looks like in Ukraine today.
Well, there's about the 20,000 devotees.
20,000.
In a country
Yeah.
smaller than California, huh?
In size?
I think
I
it
don't
has
know.
a population of about 44.
When I was visiting, there was
43,000?
56 million, but a lot of people emigrated over
I
the
think about
last 20, 30 years.
I think it has about a 40 million population. I think Ukraine.
Now it's in the about 45 million, something like that, but 1 million just left in the last week. But anyways, that's
Wow.
another story.
So
But,
you said 20,000 devotees.
Devotees, yeah. Well, yeah, that was about 7 or 8 years ago. There were about 15,000 devotees, so it could be over 20,000 now, because it's really expanding quite exponentially. People are very interested in the message of Bhakti, and when I first started going to the Soviet Union, one of the things I discovered was that when I was sitting down and speaking to groups of people in under very austere conditions, we used to have programs in flats, and we'd fit about 100 people into a small flat, and they just sit very tight for 6 hours as I would present the philosophy, and they were just so eager to hear that I just felt that I was just at the right place at the right time, that they had a strong desire to hear a spiritual message, and Krishna was reciprocating with their desires, and I was just caught in the crossfire. You know, that's how I felt. I just felt I was just there at the right place in the right time to help them understand what bhakti is, what devotion is, and they were eager to hear, because they were so used to hearing the party line that they wanted to hear something different from the party line.
Right.
And bhakti was definitely a message different than the party line, but to speak of, it was devotional and spiritual, and they already had very strong inclinations towards India anyways, even back in the Soviet times.
Right.
So people were just coming, and it's been like that. You know, I'm like I said, I've been almost 35 years. It's just been like that. People are coming, and Srila Prabhupada's books have been distributed in the millions to people. And in fact, just to give you an example, at our temple, we have a Sunday feast program.
Sure.
And every Sunday we have feasts, and new people are coming, and generally during the times before this conflict began, at least 35 to 55 people, new people, would come every Sunday, because we always receive them. We greet anybody new, they sign up, we welcome them, just as you welcomed all of your guests to your program today. We welcome them all by name. We welcome them, we tell them a little about who they are, and they all get some prasadam, they all get an invitation to the temple, they all get a garland. In fact, even one time we received one of the guests at our Sunday feast program. He was sitting right in front of me on the floor, cross-legged, and he was a presidential candidate in Ukraine, which I found out afterwards. So, but that's how they're greeted. So people just come. They come, and they're very, very eager to hear people come. You know, at our Sunday program, there's generally 1,000 people.
Wow. That's in Kiev.
In Kiev, but we have about 25 temples in Ukraine, and we have in all the major cities there are temples. I'm going to have to say there were temples because under the circumstances right now, it's been very painful. What I've been going through the last week and hearing the stories of how things are being decimated. And none of our temples have been struck yet, but the communities have been torn asunder. And but there are about 25 temples in Ukraine in all the major cities. And communities, they're really tight-knit communities. The devotees are their focus is on caring communities, not just the temple and the structure, but large communities of people. It's really grassroots. And tied into every one of our temples are communities, small communities of devotees who meet regularly in their homes. They come together, they have food, they discuss philosophy, Krishna consciousness. And there's about 360 of these small gatherings that take place once a week or once every 2 weeks, and everywhere throughout Ukraine.
Wow.
So this is why it's such a growing network of people who are learning about Krishna consciousness and deepening their faith in the practices of bhakti, chanting Hare Krishna, and studying the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and very dedicated to outreach and helping others.
You know, I know, Maharaj, you currently you're in I think since COVID began, you've been in India. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, and feeling terrible about it, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, I know that you were there. There was a conflict back in 2014 where you were there in Ukraine.
Yes, I was there. And I saw how the devotees mobilized to help hundreds of displaced families who had nothing but their passports in their pocket, running under gunfire.
Wow.
And exiting through the different borders to, for the safety of themselves and their family. I saw how the devotees mobilized into an amazing force of individuals who are there for each other. And I was willing at that time to be the face to help them. And people were, they were coming forward like, I couldn't believe the heartfelt willingness to help these devotees at that time, to come forward with donations to help them. And we set up a whole system of disbursement, grassroots, to help individuals settle themselves in other places where they had literally nothing. Passports. That's all they had was passports. Left everything behind to flee for their safety. So I already went through this once before.
Yeah.
Wow.
When it happened in the Donbass region, and I was in Ukraine at the time, and I was able to be there personally to oversee it, and I wasn't so much involved in it. I just tried to be the person who was reminding everybody that we're here for each other. And they already had it naturally in their soul, in their hearts. I didn't have to do much to be the catalyst. It was already naturally there. And I was just encouraging them, and they were doing what was natural to them. So they'll do it again.
Yeah.
I know they'll do it again because their hearts are in it. Their hearts are really in it. They're so caring about each other and so willing to make personal sacrifices. In fact, even just a few days ago, I'll tell you what happened. The temple has celibate monks who live in the temple. They're called brahmacharis. Many of the householders, the married people, families, were coming to the temple. They wanted to be with others, to hear, to chant together, to go into the basement that was below ground. And we were encouraging the monks in the temple. They're like, look, this is Kiev. This is a difficult place. Maybe you should leave. And they were saying, leave everyone? Are you serious? We want to stay there for them. They're coming. We want to be there for them.
Yeah.
They just Well, I had to force them and kick them out this morning because the bombs were exploding just nearby. I had to kick everyone out. I had to order them, please leave. You're too valuable. Please leave. And they didn't want to.
Wow.
That's the kind of heart they put in to help.
Yeah.
You know, but I feel responsible for each and every one of them. So I figured, well, I said, ultimately it's your decision, but I had to beg them. Just beg them. Please.
Can you share more about the news that you're getting, the most up-to-date news about what's happening there to the devotee communities?
Well, it's hard to say because communications is broken down in some areas. For instance, the city of Mariupol, which is on the border, which is on the sea, it was quite devastated yesterday, and I'm trying to get through to the leadership there to find out. I saw pictures of residential areas decimated, and I can't get through. So I don't know what's happened in Mariupol yesterday. I do know what's happening in Kharkov on the east side. Many devotees have no food, have no money, have no electricity, and
That's a city that's being hit particularly hard right now.
It's being hit very particularly hard right now. And there are still trains going to the west of Ukraine to a city called Lviv. And some of them boarded the train yesterday to go. And many of them are trying to hold out. They can't leave so easily. They have elderly parents who can't move. They don't want to abandon their parents. That happened in 2014 also. They just didn't want to leave their elderly parents who can't move so easily. So they stayed for them. And so many of them are still there. They're hunkering down, and they're telling me that they're listening to bombs and rockets all day long. And many of them are in basements. In Kharkov and in Kyiv also, it's like that. And in other cities, I've communicated with devotees. Excuse me. It's been like this all day. I'm going to...
if you have an important call to take regarding this, why don't you take it?
No, I do have... I feel like I'm Ukraine Central. Everybody's calling me to
Maharaj,
find
why
out
don't you take this and mute yourself for now and come back when you're ready, and we'll share some information about how people can help those devotees.
I'll just let it go because I know I can answer it because it's coming from America and I know it's early in the morning.
Okay.
I can call it back, but I don't know how to cancel it.
That's okay. Maharaj, have you heard reports of any devotees there that have been wounded or killed?
No reports of devotees killed. There was a devotee 2 days ago who was shot by a sniper, but he's fine now. I mean, not fine. The bullet went through his hand and through his chest, but it went all the way through. It wasn't lodged. And the following day, he was able to find some treatment. He couldn't find it the day that it happened.
It's hard to get into a hospital now, I assume.
Well, he was treated somehow.
Yeah.
He was treated somehow, and I was told he's walking about.
Okay, that's good to hear. Maybe now is a good time for me to share some information about how people can help, and if you want to help with funds for devotees in Ukraine. I'm going to just, it's a little, what I want to do later on today, I'll have a PayPal account, which will make it very easy. Right now, what I want to do is in a little bit of an awkward way, share with you a way that you can get to a website that has a list of trusted, authorized places where you could donate. One of them, the top one, basically this is what you do, and I wish there was a simple, clear link. So the easiest way I can tell you to do this is you Google iskonnews.org, and I think the best thing that you could type in there is verified donations for Ukraine. Verified donations for Ukraine. And there you'll find a list. The one on the top, the account on the top is going straight to the devotees in Ukraine. That this it's funds being wired straight to them. There's a list of other places where one can donate, which are, I believe most of them are like helping refugees that have just left Ukraine, like in Poland and Hungary. There are devotees, Hare Krishna devotees that are beginning large-scale food distribution in Hungary and in Poland, as well as in Poland, trying to find them housing and just help them in whatever ways they can. So those are all there. But by later, and the thing is, when you go there, it's listing bank account information, and a person like me looks at that, and I don't even know what to do. But please, have the determination to try to help them there. But I will say this: by the end of today, I should have a PayPal account to make it very easy to donate. And what we'll do is on our Instagram accounts and our Facebook account, we will post this information so that if you want to find it very easy, hopefully by the end of the day, I can have you that PayPal account.
That's great, Kostuba. That's easy. It's a no-brainer. And then what do? They're doing food distribution for the refugees or for the local devotees, or
well, that's what I'm saying is that some of those places you can read the different ones and what they are, but some of them are for going to Poland and some of them are going to England, and devotees from England are going there, and some of them are going to Hungary, where they're also making prasadam, distributing food for refugees. But that first one is going straight into Ukraine, and they'll use it in any way that they can or need to use it. It's obviously the most urgent right there, and
sure.
And however they need to use it, they'll use it. But again, I just want to mention these are very trusted sources. So, although it's happening fast, and these are being thrown together relatively quickly, they are trustworthy.
I will add one thing. Just
yes,
if you the contact in Ukraine is happening only during martial law. It's allowed to take place. And I was told that it's just a window of opportunity during martial law, that they were allowing funds to come in internationally. So
right.
I don't, whatever that means, it may not be a long term.
Okay.
It may be temporary, but if they're allowing it to happen during martial law.
So in other words, if martial law, we can assume that it's going to be at least for the next few days or so.
I would imagine, definitely.
But yes. Like, if you're thinking, oh, let me give something, a month from now after my paycheck comes in or something like that, you might miss an opportunity to help.
Yeah, if people are interested in helping directly inside Ukraine, that right now is the only window of opportunity, and however long it lasts, it's active now. I spoke to the person just 2 hours ago.
Okay, so that's one's functioning. That's when you go to that page, the verified donations for Ukraine on the ISKCONnews.org website. That's the first one that comes up. It says Ukraine ISKCON account to wire money directly to ISKCON Ukraine, and that's this more or less the same place that the PayPal account that we'll have later. Those funds are going to the same place. Is that correct, Maharaj? Same people?
Same person.
Same person. Okay. So that's again, if you want to get it right in there and really help these people that are right inside. I'm not saying we shouldn't try to help the refugees and everyone, but this is going directly to the devotee communities in Ukraine. Maharaj, you were mentioning, that people there were living under austere conditions, and you're kind of sharing a bit about the heart of these people, like, Raghunath and I, we've gotten to know so many Ukrainian devotees, so many Russian devotees, so many devotees from the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, especially on our trips to India, where
there's so many Russians and Ukrainians living in India right now and traveling around India.
And it's a fact that, I'd imagine it's a combination of many things. It's a combination of their culture. It's a combination of the austere conditions that they lived under. It's a combination of how spirituality was suppressed there for so long, but sure. There's some, you also mentioned, culturally the connection with India, But I've always seen the devotees from Russia and from Ukraine to be so special in different ways. You know, they're very talented and creative, and they just create a very beautiful. They just have a very beautiful way of living and of practicing bhakti and of sharing bhakti. Maybe you could speak to that a little, or and also to like telling us a little bit more about the temple in Ukraine itself and the scope of the span of their service there.
Well, you know, what you've described about their attitudes, they're just. What can I say? I've known nothing for 35 years that I've been going there except very honest, sincere relationships with people that I felt accepted, not because of my position. You know, sometimes people like to think that, oh yeah, but you're a spiritual leader, naturally they'll respect you. But it really went beyond that, because I felt the same from Ukrainians and Russians alike, wherever I would go. I have so much experience of perfect strangers just because I was in this dress, being helped and assisted in very many ways, because of the respect they had towards a person they saw was a religious person. And I could tell so many stories of that, but that's been my experience for many years. And in fact, I remember one time I had a difficult time getting on a flight, and it was, I think it was still maybe the Soviet times, somewhere around the late 1980s, 1990. And the woman saw me. It must have been after the Soviet times, because I was dressed I was dressed like this. During the Soviet times, I was always dressed in Western clothes. So anyways, I had very difficulties getting on a flight, and this woman who has registered me saw I was a religious person, and she held up the flight. Not only she held up the flight, she personally carried my suitcase and put it on the plane. She put me on the plane, and she fastened the seatbelt for me to make sure that I was secure before she got off the plane and the flight took off. I mean, when I saw that, I said, you know, this is how I was being treated, you know. Yeah. And I have many similar experiences like that. And but so it's not just the devotees; it's just part of their culture, which I experience. Things have changed some degree over the years. Things have changed.
With the Western influence and
Western influence, whatever you may want to call it. Yes. Yeah. I don't want to go into so many of those details, but these are definitely memories that I have from the early days. And throughout the 1990s also, I would say they were very prominent. And it's still there. And you asked about the temple and what the temple does. Well, we have a temple in Kiev. It's a huge building. It's about 8 stories, and it was built by devotee hands. And most of it was built by devotees. They built it themselves. They went out in the early days, and they were just simply going from factory to factory with their hands out, begging for concrete, begging for bricks, begging for steel, begging for doors, begging for sinks. They would go place to place and just beg the materials to build the temple. And their heart was just so much into it. There was one devotee, they didn't have so much money. There was one devotee who would go out in the middle of the winter, and she would flag down people who were driving by in cranes, and she would give them food, prasadam, and say, will you come and please help us lift concrete slabs to help us build our temple?
My goodness.
And the cranes would come up the road, off the main road, come up another road, and come up, and they would dedicate the whole day there. just to lift up the concrete slabs to build the temple. That's how it was constructed. And the construction's still going on, because it's on the ground. It's on the ground. It's not done by huge amounts of money that are coming in. It's just, they're just ready just to live simply and devote their energies to building a wonderful temple to glorify Krishna and to spread the Krishna consciousness movement, to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. And that's how it's grown.
Wow.
That's how it's grown. I just feel like an observer who's watching it all. Somehow I'm very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to be there to see it, how it all goes. I take no personal credit for this. It's in their hearts. And I give all credit to Srila Prabhupada because their faith comes from reading his books. Mm-hmm. Their faith comes from listening to his lectures. Their faith comes from all that Srila Prabhupada gave to his followers. I'm just simply, somebody who's just passing on Prabhupada's message to them. And that's how I felt for 35 years. And I feel right now, I just feel I want to give Srila Prabhupada's compassion to them. And that's why I'm on the phone constantly, speaking to them, encouraging them, and trying to get them through this very difficult time. There's a very large community in Kiev. I'd say, there's maybe 1,500 to 2,000 devotees in Kiev alone. Mm. And on major festivals, there's 2,500 people in a temple room that they built themselves.
Wow. You have these huge festivals there in Ukraine yearly. Is that right?
Yes, we have festivals. They used to be down south in the Crimea until Crimea was no longer a part of Ukraine. But the last festival we had in Crimea was in 2013, and there were 14,000 devotees in attendance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maharaj, we're inspired.
And the way it's organized is so wonderful. There are no fees. Everybody just gives from the heart.
Wow.
There are no fees. They just give whatever they can give.
That's a big thing. If you're having a festival with 14,000 people, you have to feed them all and house them all. You do it with no fees.
You just depend on, they're just depending on Krishna, and, and people are coming forward, and because they know that nobody's earning any money off the money they give to the festival. It's all going to them.
Right.
So they give.
Right.
They give from their hearts because they know nobody's taking any funds for this. And the only thing they have to, we sort of like act as the go-between for accommodations, because they rent out whole sanatoriums, and hotels at a time. They book all the rooms. We book them all in advance, and we tell them, your rooms will be filled. Please let us be the intermediaries, and we'll send people to fill up all your rooms. So that they do. But as far as the food, as far as everything else, the festival fees, it's all on a donation basis. And that's how it's been going on for 20-something years. And that's why so many people just love to come to the festival. And so many senior leaders are coming there to give lectures and to chant and to hear the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And so many of the local people whose towns have been overrun by devotees.
Right.
they're now with shaved heads, wearing robes, chanting Hare Krishna. They're just so grateful that the devotees chose their town to hold their festivals.
Amazing. Yeah, it's their mood is contagious. It's a beautiful people and beautiful mood. Maharaj, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
I hope I didn't speak too much. Please forgive me.
No, we could go on and on and on. We just run out of time.
Yeah,
no.
We could have him come back.
Get into all the stories.
Explain about all these old stories and the
maybe we can do that in the future, Maharaj.
Disguises, where in those
spy versus spy stories. But Maharaj, thank you for joining us this morning. I can say, from personal experience, Maharaj is speaking very humbly. It's like this is a person that's completely, fully dedicated his time from morning to night, every day, his entire life to serve. And so we don't want to hold you up from serving more right now. We know that's important. I just want to say thank you for coming. I want to share with all our listeners to consider for a moment what it's like, what it would be like if your city were being bombed, and if your homes were being destroyed, and your loved ones were in danger, and the people in your city were running for the borders to try to find safety, and how much you would appreciate at this moment if someone reached out and tried to help. And our practice of bhakti is about serving others and caring. It's a heart to heart practice, and this is an opportunity where you can reach out to Krishna's devotees in a very difficult circumstance and show them that you care, and in a very practical way help them. So again, if people want to help, you can go to iskonnews.org and or Google that along with the words verified donations for Ukraine. The top account is going directly to the devotees in Ukraine. And again, hopefully by the end of today, we'll have a PayPal account for you to make it easier. And you can find that information. You will be able to find that information on our Instagram and Facebook pages. And that's all for now. Yes, Maharaj.
I would just like to say thank all the devotees for all your guests for your comments. I just noticed they were there. I don't really check chats.
I'll save that and mail it to you.
That's part of my
Maharaj.
service. I check the chat board.
He checks it a little too much, Maharaj. Sometimes I feel like I'm alone over here, Maharaj.
Maharaj, we are inspired by your service and living vicariously through your adventures. And I want to go to the Ukraine. Actually, it's inspiring what's going on there, and we're praying for them, and we're hoping this comes to an end real quick, and we get a little bit more stability and peace within their lives, and our hearts are extended to them. Thank you so much for joining us.
Please keep these devotees in your prayers, and I'm sure they'll just be very grateful for that. In itself, it will inspire them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.